This Choircast podcast is brought to you by Finally Free, a surrender to authenticity. Finally Free is a personal memoir written as a cautionary tale of the dangers of gay conversion therapy. It is my hope that my story can serve to uplift individuals within high-control religions to break free, as well as help parents understand the importance of affirming their child's identity. Do justice, love mercy, walk humbly.
Well, welcome everyone to I Was a Teenage Fundamentalist. Troy, I'm going to ask how you are, and I'm going to preempt that. You're not well.
No, I'm not well. I'm not crazy. I'm just a little unwell. I have a man cold, and I got it whilst in Thailand. So it's probably some sort of crazy Thai bug that I've brought back to Australia, and now I'm going to spread around, which is pretty awesome.
There's a lot of Thai bugs people bring back, and they're generally not of the kind that you've brought back. So you're very fortunate. So unless you have to go get a swab and they find another bug, I think you'll be fine.
Years ago, in between churches, I was coming back from Thailand, and they were x-raying my suitcase. And I said to the guy who was x-raying my suitcase, this is coming back into Australia, I said, everything dangerous is in my bloodstream. Haha. And I laughed, and he just looked at me, and I thought, maybe I'm not supposed to say that. And yeah, that was a true story.
Yeah, those border security guys just don't have a great sense of humour, I find. I don't know.
Yeah, they take things very seriously, you know.
Yeah, I know.
But yeah, everything dangerous probably was in my bloodstream at that point. But anyway.
Quite possibly. Today we've got special guests though, Troy. So we're going to welcome them, and we have done a crossover episode with them and been on their podcast. And for those that listen to it, you may remember that Tracey actually broadcast from her special studio at the time that was made up of washing baskets, laundry baskets. So it was interesting. So we've got the Feet of Clay ladies here. We've got Sharon and Tracey. And Tracey is all dressed up. She has a headpiece on and these very, very funky glasses. So it's a shame that we're not coming to you via video. And Sharon is totally repping the pod with her backslider I Was a Teenage Fundamentalist t-shirt. So we're feeling very special. But we want to throw to you and welcome to I Was a Teenage Fundamentalist.
Thank you. Woo!
I have vintage cat glasses that I got at a vintage store. And it is too bad because I had to redeem myself from all the jokes about being in a laundry basket. And then I think the first time I was in a closet, an actual closet. So I feel like I've upgraded just a little bit.
You have. I'm going to confess right now. I'm in Northern Virginia. We're at Dave's son's house. And so I've had to kind of rig up. I brought my mic with me, but I've had to rig up something, and I needed a stand for my computer. So I actually have a plastic laundry basket turned upside down so that my computer is sitting on it. So laundry is the theme. That's what women do. Cook and clean, right?
You guys have got laundry basket fetishes. It's weird.
I think it's a podcast hack that you guys can send donations for getting that great tip from us. If you don't have a sound studio, get your nearest laundry basket.
Actually, I saw on Facebook Marketplace this week a studio. It was a proper studio. It looked absolutely amazing. And someone was selling it for next to nothing. Like $1,000 or something. It was a $10,000 studio, but got nowhere to put it because it's got to go indoors. It could have gone in my garage. My garage is full. But yes, it did look amazing because Troy and I have a couple of times gone, how good would it be to have a studio? But we don't.
Well, when I was in Bangkok the other day, I sent you guys photos, didn't I? That H&M in Bangkok actually have a podcast studio that you can book. And then you can go in and record your episodes or whatever it is that you're doing. And it was just really, really nice. And I thought, you can dream. But I don't have the room for it either. I would need another room.
You were sending us little pictures of these little rooms in Bangkok, and I was like, "Is that where you go to wank off?" I mean, what?
No, see, I'm a better Christian now than I was before I was, in church, and so I don't do that when I go to Thailand. I just like eat and hang out with my family and everything. I did actually say to my wife, I said, "Should we take our daughter, because our son didn't come, should we take her down to the red light district and, just show her, right? As like an experience kind of thing." And my wife's like, no, we can't take her. And I'm like, it'll be all right. We're not going to buy her a chick or anything. But yeah, we didn't.
Oh, good decision not to. Good decision, Troy.
Last year, we took all the kids to Europe, and we went to Amsterdam, and the older boys went off as the older girls and sampled the local fairs, whereas the young boys were 15 and they hung out with us. So us and our other friends thought, where do we take them? We'll take them to the red light district. So we took them right on. And for those who haven't been there, just before sundown, it's raucous, it's pretty full on, there's lots of drugs and lots of partying. But when the sun goes down, the women in the windows undress. So the boys were walking along and they are looking and going, oh yeah, women in lingerie. Sun starts to set, women are nude, their mouths are dropping, they're going over, and they stood by a window, and one of the women just looked at them, pointed a finger and said, "Go to bed," and pulled the curtains closed. So it was quite an experience for them. But one of them too, our friend's son was running along and he smacked this thing outside a window, and it was all these things on strings, and it flew back and it hit his dad in the head, and it was a giant dildo. So they're just hanging from the doorways.
Just hanging from the doorways. Wow. And you didn't give them any heads up that this was going to happen as the sun set?
Well, they had, because we'd had dinner just outside the red light district, so they knew that it was potentially we're going to go for a walk through there. So they knew it. They were looking forward to it as well. And, hey, it's educational. And they seemed to get an education, and that was the prime objective. So well done us. Good parenting, patting ourselves on the back. So it was great. Your podcast, like both of you, last time you were on the pod, you were coming out telling your stories, and it was pre-launch of the Feet of Clay podcast that now is 45, 48 episodes in or whatever it is. So, you're a long way down the track. You've got this amazing following. You're doing some incredible work. You've had great guests on. What has been happening in the last, 18 months since you were on our pod?
Well, it's been less than 18 months, really. It's when you were in March of 23, right, Tracey?
Yes. And then we were on right as you were starting your fifth season.
I think it was fourth season, actually, because our fifth season has been an interesting season where we tried something different. And this is our fifth season now that we're recording. And yes, our slightly failed experiment that we tried in our fifth season of looking at other progressive expressions of religion to try and draw people in to recognise that, hey, they're all the fucking same and they're all saying the same sort of thing. So they're all a load of shit. But people thought that we were trying to convert them to something else, unfortunately.
Did they really? That's really interesting. I actually really enjoyed that series because I found it fascinating. And you're right. It's basically same shit with just different flavored sprinkles on top. It's whether it's Christian or Muslim or Islam or whatever, it is the same stuff. And I thought it was fascinating. I'm sorry that others didn't necessarily find it as compelling, but hey, I actually don't think it's mistakes. I think it's part of the learning and trying things and following what interests you. I think that's what's important.
I think we've ended up with a fatwa on our head as a result of it. People, they did push back. There's quite a few people who said that they felt betrayed by us and all that sort of thing.
Wow.
We're getting over it, so it's absolutely fine. But
yeah, Reddit was really unkind because we were posting, we do, I mean, Reddit is always unkind, right? I don't like going on Reddit, but we do promote our stuff there, and people are like, you can't come in here and promote other religions. This is like the ex-Christian groups and the, recovering from Christianity groups and things like that. And yeah, it was really bizarre because they're like, you can't come in here and promote, these religions and everything. It's like, we're not promoting these religions. We're ex-Christians too. We're not subscribing to these religions. We're just talking. And people were really, quite aggressive. And it got to the point where there was a few Reddit groups where I just left. Like, we're not even going to promote there anymore. And so the haters won. And they can have those rooms. But yeah, it was quite intense that when we were trying to tell people, hey, we're just trying to expand your horizons and show you what's going on, people were like, oh, they're feeding us religion. And it's like, no, promise.
Yeah, that's interesting because I never picked up at all that you were trying to feed the religion. And I thought it was actually really good to be able to test our ability to wade through the shit, right? And so especially after I had listened to the one on the death experience. What was that one called?
Oh, was that the Death Walker? Zenith Virago?
No, not the Death Walker, but the one who went to heaven. Yes.
Yes.
And of course, Sharon and I are very interested in those kinds of things. And we were interested in those even as we were deconstructing and when we deconstructed. But, listening to it, and then as soon as he got to the part about angels singing hymns, I went, no, 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 no. But it wasn't no, 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 how dare, you guys put this on. It was an ability to be able to see all the stuff that we've learned, all the ability that we have for critical thinking, all of the stuff that we know that we went through and why we believed what we believed, and apply that critical thinking to hearing someone's story. And I was very proud. I looked at some of the comments on your Facebook group, and it was like, they were actually doing, I think, what they were supposed to be doing. They were very astute, and they would see something, and I guess some people are still maybe too close to it that it is triggering. But I was actually going, well done. You guys waded through that. You have a nose to smell the stuff that's like, it sounds like it's, I don't know that he's intentionally trying to tell a tale, but it definitely dovetails into, I think, our own experiences of when we heard Jesus talk. I mean, we walked in the gifts of the Holy Spirit. We believed we had visions. We believed we saw things that are rooted in our own experiences. So I found it very fascinating just to hear people's story and then be able to apply what I've learned as I listened critically. So I thought, well done. I enjoyed it.
I did too. And I'm going to add that I feel like those who would react in fear, because that's what it is. Anyone who had this, visceral, oh my God, what are you guys doing? Are you trying to convert us? I mean, of course you weren't trying to convert anyone. That was very clear from your intros. But I think that fear response is just a sign of someone who is still near the beginning of their journey out of the brainwashing, out of a high control group, beginning to recognize the harm that was caused to them, and still being afraid of being dragged back into it somehow. And so I look at that and I think, okay, they're just young. They're young in their journey. I don't care what age they are physically. They're young in their journey. If they feel so threatened that they can't listen to someone else say what they believe or what they don't believe, and just talk about it and put it on the table and be able to go, okay, that's interesting.
I think what often happens, and we've spoken about this a fair bit, is that, and sorry, this has turned into talking about us, so we're going to come back to you guys.
No, we want to.
No, I've just realised that as I'm talking, I'm going, fuck, we're talking about us. But quite often we've spoken about that people can leave fundamentalism, but fundamentalism can't leave them, or fails to leave them. And Lucy, who is a good friend of the pod, she ran our socials for quite a while, And she sent me a link to a Substack from a therapist, I think Laura Anderson was her name, that wrote about this. And she wrote about the fact that you can leave fundamentalism, but it sticks. And then you end up basically, it's a bit of a transference process where you just look at things so incredibly black and white going forward, and you become part of a really toxic sort of cancel culture where you have zero tolerance of anything, and you're exactly like you were when you're a fundamentalist Christian. So we've actually got Laura on the pod having a chat. So that'll be a great chat, and we've asked her to chat about that.
That's great.
Yeah, I mean, I expect us to get a fair bit from that.
Can't wait. That's great.
But that's something we definitely experienced. So when I was just leaving, or I wasn't even leaving yet, right? I had been searching, for truth, questioning the Bible. And back in the day, remember dial-up? That's how old I am, dial-up internet. And so I'd go down, it's our basement at the time. I dial up and I found an atheist chat room. And it was the best thing for me because I could just, free text different questions that I have. And they were so kind and respectful to me. And that was one of the things that I didn't expect, right? Because as fundamentalists, we, these atheists and they all serve Satan and they're just trying to, come at us. And they really backed off from trying to convince me of anything. They would question back with questions. And I really began to take notice that it was that dogmatic kind of response that was really turning me off from Christianity. And I was starting to see that aspect in other belief systems or other groups of people. And, I know that we live, in America, we're kind of the boiling pot right now for you're either dogmatic in your politics, you're dogmatic in your beliefs. It's just everywhere. And I think that's the one thing that as you get older, I don't know for you, Sharon, because I know we were really black and white, but it's being able to come into that place, again, balance. I often say balance, but hearing people's story without coming to try to convince anyone of anything. And so I think that's going to be an excellent broadcast. And I think people need to be able to take a step back and say, why does that bother me so much? And do some internal thinking about it.
Yeah, to be curious, to listen with curiosity rather than an agenda to convince someone. And remember that stupid trite, oh God, I hate it, but that thing they used to say, oh, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Right. That was like our manipulative, how we're going to suck people into this Jesus thing and get them converted. But it was an agenda. It was not, I'm genuinely interested to find out about you as a person and what you think and what you feel and what your experiences have been. It's, I'm going to pretend to be interested so that I can find the right hook to latch onto you and reel you in. And we were taught that in evangelicalism, weren't we? That was part of our gig to go expand the kingdom of God. And it is very different to stop and say, okay, why am I having this reaction? Why am I feeling fear? What is going on with me? And I remember I was still trying to be a Christian. There was a guy, we bought a company, a guy came in who had worked for that company. He was in sales and he had been in a 12-step program and he had been sober for quite a number of years. And one of the things he would say is contempt prior to investigation. And I thought, wow, that started to really resonate with me. Again, I'm still believing in Jesus, but that concept of making a judgment before you really understand it, like you really understand it for yourself, rather than just regurgitating what your leaders or your pastor have said. So I'm rambling.
No, you're not. And I think it's so valid. We often talk about this in other contexts at work that I think people find it incredibly difficult to sit in the grey. And I don't know about you guys, but the older I get, the greyer life is. The certainty fades away. And we have this, I mean, look, I work for an organisation that I oversee an area that we have about 120 therapists. So it's really interesting because it comes up in that professional context as well of when you're working with people, you got to sit with the grey and you can't pass judgment because that's not what you're there for. And a lot of our professional supervision and reflective practice is about that. Be comfortable in the grey, that your truth isn't necessarily their truth, all that sort of, postmodern stuff. But people find it really difficult. And I think that's why we are seeing such polarizing politics across the globe, or across the flat if you're a flat earther. But I think that, and you're seeing it, you're at front and center. You've got an event coming up in November with the US elections that is very much about polarization more than it ever has been. And sorry to say, but you're going to have a President Trump in November. So I think it's that divisive black and white politics which wins, because people sitting in the grey is really uncomfortable. It's unsettling. It's insecure. And we don't equip people, and we particularly don't equip current generations with it. And I think this is why you see such polarizing responses from current generations, like the Zs and the Alphas. You are seeing that polarizing cancel culture type of stuff because it's like, no, there is only one truth. There is only one direction, and blah, blah, blah. One Direction was, that was Gen Y. Gen Z. But I think, I'm going to get down off my soapbox, but I think that for me, that's what I'm seeing more and more.
You're right. You're exactly right, Brian. And it is easier. It's so much easier. And it really is juvenile thinking. It's in psychology, the idea of black and white absolutes is a child's view. The complexities as you come into adulthood, if you let yourself mature, not just be stuck in your teenage fundamentalist thinking. It is. But it's funny, Brian, you used the word insecure. And I think for me, when I think about being able to sit with the gray, all the shades of gray, I think of it more as, in the beginning, it's uncomfortable because black and white absolutes just feel more stable. But I don't find it a place of insecurity now. I find it a place of, it's I don't know, it just feels so much better. And I'm
Well, I think for us, one of the things I was thinking about today, even, we were so indoctrinated to be tied to the absolute truth, to be no compromisers, right? That was the message that drew us in. And there is a sense of loyalty. And I know when I was starting, to question some of those absolute truths, there is this sense of, now I am being disloyal. I'm being disloyal to the truth. I'm being disloyal to Jesus, right? Because I moved away from the Bible before I moved away from Jesus because I had all these experiences. What do I do with these experiences that I attributed to, this God who loved me? And to question these absolutes, it was a wrestling with, am I a compromiser, and am I being disloyal? And I think sometimes that fear can get you to pull back and like, okay, I'm just going to be resolute. I am going to be faithful. I am going to be loyal. And then you dig in and don't let yourself, because what did we learn about? I'd rather you be hot or cold, because if you're lukewarm, I'm going to spit you out of my mouth. And it was like, I don't want to be lukewarm. So we're ingrained from, even in our culture, right? From our Christianity and even in our culture, to stand with the truth.
There's so much that you guys have said there. I'm sitting here with my man cold, just nursing it, listening, going, oh, when should I jump in? Because I'm so sick. But I'm listening to you guys and I'm thinking, the idea of the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And I think when I first left, it was like, I know that Christianity is now my enemy. I know that may sound like an intense thing to say, but that's how I felt when I first left, right? This is not good. This is bad. This has done me a lot of damage. So I looked to the enemies of Christianity and said, oh, they're my friends. But they're not always your friend. Not everybody that, is waving the flag against fundamentalism is necessarily, in air quotes, right. But the other thing that you said, Tracey, was you said, when I left, I was searching for truth. And it's like, there it is again. See, we were searching for an absolute. We're out there going, okay, what's true now? And I think that's what people got so upset about with our progressive religions thing, because we're presenting, and they're like, no, that's wrong. That's bad. Vehemently opposed to anything that smells like religion, because all religion is evil. Or, and look, I don't have a religion. So even in saying this, but not all religions are bad, and not all people that practice religions are bad. And yet for the longest time, as an atheist, because, I'm an atheist now, so therefore I think all this. And it was that absolutism again. And I totally did that.
And yet, there are, I think I read a meme, and it's like, I give you permission to believe what you want to believe until your beliefs take away my fundamental rights as a human being, right? And so there is a line in there, right, where we do cause harm to others, where there is, an assault on other people trying to live their lives, and that gets gray. And that's why we loved having Anthony Van Brown on our show, because I think he said a lot of this without coming out and saying it specifically, but he didn't want to immediately be an activist. He wasn't going to go against the people who were against him. He was trying to get a platform where he could have conversations. And, I think particularly in our political environment with trans rights and gay rights and the abortion, there is, like, those are tough issues where you see this clash of morality. And I step back and I do ponder that, because I recoil against the dogmatic, stance. And yet at some point, how do you defend the defenseless without, taking a stand? So I just thought I'd mix it up, throw that back into the middle.
I've boiled it down for myself now to this. I don't give a fuck what anybody believes. I care, how do you behave? How do you behave? What can I see and measure? I don't care what's in your head. What are you doing in this world? Are you doing good? Are you taking away rights of others and trampling other people? Or are you helping one another? Or at the very best, if you can't help them, ignore it. Just leave them alone. Stay the fuck out of their lives. But, what your theology is and what you believe about a sky god or not. Ow, fuck, sorry, I just got a cramp in my thigh.
How to say you're old without saying you're old.
That hurts.
And she's not doing anything, listener. She's just sitting there.
That's not true. I think I'm bouncing my legs. I think I'm, Troy.
You're doing a Keith Green thing.
No, you know what it is, Troy, listening to your
it's
episode
ADHD.
about ADHD. But you know what my therapist said? I didn't ask him specifically about that, but he talked about hyper-focused. Like there is a hyper-focus thing where you just get, I talked about it, like I get tunnel vision. I just get so intent on something and everything else just falls away and I'm focused and I get it done. And anyway, see, I just went off on something. Sorry, guys.
No, that's right. One word, dexamphetamine.
Well, no, speaking of that, I was on the plane and I noticed that my leg was bouncing and I said to my wife, I said, look at my leg. There it is. Because when you get older, the hyperactivity thing, actually you learn to manage it, and you know, it's not like when you're a kid you're bouncing off the walls. But I find myself, you know, and it was interesting because when I looked back at the doctor showed me the report and it said he didn't sit still for the whole session. And I was like, really? I thought I was really, really still. No, apparently not. No, I was, you know, bouncing and moving and all that kind of stuff. It's so funny. I look back now on the whole ADHD thing and it's like it was there the whole time. I used to pee my pants all the time when I was a kid because I couldn't be bothered going to the toilet, right? If it had been socially acceptable, I would have just stood up and peed. But I used to not absolutely pee my pants, but, you know, just sort of a little bit because I just couldn't hold it in anymore. And this is when I was like 6. And that's because I was just focusing on whatever the hell I was focusing on and screw going to the toilet.
I thought you were going to say 16, but yeah, keep on.
No, that's right. He jizzed in his pants at 16. I saw you peddling that back, Troy, because I saw you go, I used to piss my pants all the time. Then you're like, oh, fuck, everyone will think I piss my pants. And then you go, oh, it was just a little bit, just a dribble. Oh, and I was 6.
Oh, my God.
It's a beautiful thing. But no, look, I completely agree. It's that whole I agree with pant pissing as well, but that's fine. But I agree with the responsibility and rights. You know, it's a coin. You know, one side is you got your rights, the other side is responsibilities. So you got to exercise both, and it's a tricky tightrope to walk. I think this life, and it certainly doesn't get any clearer when you do back away from the fundamentalism, black and whiteness, and there's a freedom in that. I've just found such a freedom. Like, I don't have to fucking believe this or that, and I can actually change what I believe when evidence presents itself, and I'm okay with that, and I actually really enjoy that.
No, don't you think there's a deconstruction scene? There's a group of beliefs that you're supposed to sort of adhere to, and you have to sort of subscribe. Like, even in the deconstruction scene, I feel, even in our group, I think, oh, I can't say that. They will think this, you know, sometimes some of my own, you know, hidden opinions. And I think that there's a vibe in the deconstruction scene that, you know, you think this about this and this about that. And if you want to be part of this community, because there's people, I think, that at different stages that wouldn't dare say what they still think.
No, I think that's true. I think you find that in any social circles. I mean, you can find that in work circles, you find that wherever humans are gathering. And I think the beauty, what Brian was saying, is it is really great internally to give myself permission to not have to follow the card carrying membership of what anyone in any of these social circles are doing. But then I still do try to be wise, not wise as a serpent and gentle as a dove, but I read the room, right? And it's kind of like, what is the benefit for me throwing out kind of this bomb of a belief? And sometimes I will, and sometimes I won't. And usually I'm trying to take the internal temperature of, I still want to be true to who I am. And then I also want to learn. So it's like, okay, so, I mean, I could throw some of the hotbed ones about abortion is one of them, right? Because, you know, we lived for a long time with political activism against abortion, which we to this day will stand against all of that political activism. But I am a mother who had 5 children. And I felt them move. I've had a nephew who was born premature at 5 months. And so I think it's a nuanced topic. I think there's a point at which there is viability in this life that hasn't come outside. You may want to cut this because this might be way too controversial when it goes to press. But it's like, that's that black or white. It's always right. It's always wrong. And it's like,
Nope.
this is that simple thinking again. And it's like, at some point as a society, we have to look at life and pain and where that might begin and where we might take a stand. And you can't have those conversations, right? I rarely have those really thoughtful conversations because it immediately triggers, you're going to take rights away, or, you know, you're going to kill, you know, the next Einstein. And I think that's a classic example of there being a gray, right? There's, where does the society have a time to step in? Where do people have the right to make their own moral decisions? Where does the state have, any kind of say? Those are big conversations. So
Yeah, we will.
I completely agree with you.
Yeah, we will. We will do an entire. It's probably not going to be one episode. It'll probably be more than that. But really,
knowing you guys, it'll be 9, right? It'll be 9 episodes, 9 3-hour episodes.
And then we'll apologize for not getting to it, and then we'll postpone it, and then we'll do an episode before the episode.
Yeah. No, we will delve into the whole topic of abortion, because we were we were there. We were part of the huge effort to roll back Roe v. Wade in the 80s. And what we did was shit. That doesn't mean we support all abortion up till 9 months. That doesn't mean we say there should be no abortion. That doesn't mean that now. But what we did with that whole black and white thing,
yes,
that was shit. So
yes.
Yeah.
And that's what we find whenever we've approached things with that black and white. That's where you take the opportunity to have the really great conversations. And that's what's frustrating with our political system, right? It's not built to have nuance. It's not built to have good conversations.
No,
I guess to the point, Troy, I completely agree. There are definitely spaces still in the deconstruction world. And, you just approach it gently. I think approach people gently with where they're at. And I think even with some of your episodes and what we often say, because people will write us, and my first thing is, we're not for everybody. Our podcast is not for everybody. And if this is not for you, it's not for you. But there are people that are finding value in it, and approach people gently. If you have too many triggers going on, you should move along and go find something so that you can take care of yourself.
So how much do you think that lack of nuance is because of where we've come from, as opposed to just a societal influence?
I think that it's basic human nature, because it takes time and effort and investment to look at nuance. It's so much easier to be black and white, us, them, right, wrong. It's faster, it's easier, and sometimes it's basically lazy. And those of us who came out of fundamentalism, we've totally got it. But I'll tell you what, in America, you hear people waving their guns and their flags and all this other shit. And I'm like, they had nothing to do. They did not have a fundamental religious experience like we did. No, they've got their own religion is their warped sense of patriotism, or their, I don't know, just all kinds of stuff. So I think it goes beyond just those of us who bought into the absolutism of the Bible.
Yeah, and it might be evolutionary. I'm not an expert, but I know tribalism and all of that definitely factors in. But I see it, and so what's interesting for me is to see it outside of a religious context. And, Sharon will know this in the animal behavior world and how you approach animal behavior in food, vegetarianism versus the meat eaters. Medical care, right? For the people who no intervention to all intervention, and you get into circles and you're like, whoa, this is dogmatic thinking. I mean, I can pick it out now. Wow, you're really dogmatic thinking. And I think the balance is somewhere along the right path here, instead of all of these, this or that. But that's because I'm old now. So I'm like, I look forward to the day, not only when I can wear these like funky glasses, but maybe I'll have purple hair and I'll just be old and I can just say stuff because she's just an old lady. I look forward to that.
You can do that now. We're not going to cancel you, and we're not going to cut out what you spoke about and said that maybe it's too controversial. No, it's not. Hey, whatever. Say it. What we do draw the line at, Sharon, is you're swearing. We get offended by swearing.
I'm so fucking sorry.
She must You must have to really edit you out a lot.
No.
But that was so to that point at the very beginning, I looked Sharon in the eye. I think she was actually here. And I said, if we're going to swear, you are going to cut out a whole group of people who will completely not hear anything that we have to say. So if you want, like, especially any of those ex-LDMers, 2 minutes in, they're going to be like, we're not going to hear it. And she's like, I'm going to be me. And if people want to listen, they can listen. And I was like, okay, that's what we're going to do. And,
No.
and we have cut people out. They don't want to hear the foul. What is Sharon that they said? The foul mouth, which kind of gave birth to the steaming vat of rebellious witchery that flows from our mouth.
Let's be honest. I don't think it's a swearing entirely they're turning off from. They don't want to hear anything that goes against their truth. So no, as you probably heard recently, there was the next level swearing on our pod where Troy rolled out the C word and Bart
He said
and
cunt.
Cola.
He said,
He
"Oh,
did.
you little cunt."
And you know what?
Hey, Troy,
Try.
I'll see your cunt
Hey, Trump.
and I'll raise you. I'm sorry.
No, you can call him a
What do you-
trunt. That's fine.
Hey, Trump.
But I thought the British use cunt more often, correct? The Australians don't. Is it still as taboo as it is in the US?
We use it a lot. It's look.
Brian will greet me with "Hey, cunt."
it's a term of endearment. It's actually not. It really does depend on what groups you mix.
It depends
in,
on
though.
how you use it, right? If you go, "You fucking cunt," well, then, that's bad, right? But if you go, "Hey, cunt, how's your family?" then that's not bad. So
It's really interesting. Like friends of mine were South African, and when they immigrated to Australia, they used cunt a lot. But if you called someone a motherfucker in from the culture they came from, that was incredibly offensive. Like there's a cultural context, and it's also a word which really only stopped getting used like 100 years ago because people decided that it was offensive. It was something that was used for hundreds of years and it wasn't offensive. So it's interesting how overlays of culture turn something offensive. And we've just offended a lot of people, so...
that was great the way you did that. That was very grown up. Overlays of culture. That was really good. I liked it.
Yeah, I read it. I put it into ChatGPT and it told me what to say.
You're a clever
to
cunt,
say.
aren't you? Really.
I remember asking my sister. My sister was 3 years older than me, and so she taught me all the bad words. And I remember asking her what that meant because I didn't hear it very often. And when she told me, I remember thinking, why is that one so bad? When other words seemed, I don't know, like to me, fuck seemed like even the way people were using it seemed more offensive. So I was like, I don't quite understand why that one's so bad.
And it's not just that it's the female body part, because we say pussy and we say, vag and things like that. Can I tell you a funny story, true story, right? So I may have told this on the pod before, so forgive me if I have. But
you haven't.
My kids were in the car one day with me, and they were probably about 8 and 6. And we were driving along and my wife was there, and my wife is Chinese. She's a little bit more conservative than I am at times, not always, but at times. And my son goes, "Hey, Dad, what's the C word?" And I went, "Oh," and I thought, okay, right. Here's a lefty parenting moment, right? And then my daughter goes, "Yeah, Dad, what's the C word?" And I thought, okay. And my wife looks at me and I said, "Okay, kids, I'm going to tell you what the C word is. But it's a word that only Mummy and I can say. I don't want you going to school and saying it and all this kind of stuff." And so I worded up, and here I was, this is my, lefty progressive parenting moment and everything. And I said, "So I'm going to tell you what it is. The word is cunt, and it's spelled CUNT, and it means, a lady's private parts and blah, blah, blah." And then they stopped, and then my son goes, "Oh, I thought it was crap." And then my daughter goes, "Yeah, I did too," like this. And then my wife looked at me and I was just like, Anyway, cut to years later, my daughter, we were talking about it, right? Because, they're she's nearly 18 now, and my son's, well into his nearly 20s. And we were talking about that moment and laughing about how funny it was, when Dad was just like, way to go, you just taught your kids how to say cunt, and, trying to be all progressive and cool. And my daughter said to me, she goes, first thing I did next day at school was I sat down with my friends and said, I know what the C word is, and it's cunt,
Exactly.
C-U-N-T, and it means a lady, and just told everybody at her like grade 1 table, right? And I was a teacher at the school at the time, right? Anyway, lucky it never blow up. But isn't that's hilarious that I was trying to be all progressive, but actually I taught my kids how to say cunt.
I think that's brilliant. I love that. First grade.
Of course you would, Sharon.
Well, of course I would. First grade. So 2 school stories and then something else. So in first grade, I was at a parochial school, St. Clements of Rome in Metairie, Louisiana, outside New Orleans. And, it was staffed by the nuns. And I got brought into Mother Superior's office and grilled because I had said shit on the playground. And I don't know if another kid heard me or a nun heard me or whatever, but, I just got grilled for that. So I'm thinking back, I must have had our family must have had a very colorful vocabulary back then. And then when
I was going to say the nun was like, wait till this woman grows up.
And then in 8th grade, we were writing, it was an English class, and I don't remember what it was. It was an assignment to write a short story or something. And I did something about teenagers in a family situation or whatever. And the vocabulary in my little writing was filled with fuck and shit and all this kind of stuff. And I got called out too of like, you shouldn't use this language. And I was like, isn't that just how people talk? And the funny thing for me is I still have a very slight response when I hear God damn it or Jesus Christ. And I still do. I mean,
That's the Holy Spirit, Sharon.
That's right. That's what that is. That's not your conditioning, Sharon. That's God.
It's God.
But it does. That is what, that whole loyalty thing of, oh no, what am I doing? Actually, I never say that. If you've ever noticed, or if I've ever said it, it's been very, very few. Tracey will say, God damn it. But I don't. And
I couldn't say Jesus Christ as a curse thing for a really long time. And now it comes naturally.
I can't.
Now it comes naturally.
I still can't. I can't. It's interesting. Well, I watch a lot of, I notice in
That's because of the God-shaped hole in your heart. Right?
I think it is. But in the US, though, it's a very, very cultural thing, because I noticed that in a lot of your mainstream TV shows in the States, people won't say, oh, God. They'll go, oh, gosh. So whereas in Australia, we will by default go, oh, God, for God's sake, that's just whatever. We don't care. But I don't know if it is intentional and people just are told you can't say, oh, God. But I notice it a lot in US shows. So you guys are just, it's ingrained in you as well.
When I lived in Georgia as a kid, my parents got called in to talk to my grade 4 teacher because I said hell. Right. And for us as Australians, it's like, and even now I look back and I go, why is that a swear word? Like, even now I look and go, why is hell a swear word? Like, it's, it's a place of eternal torture and torment and everything. It's not swearing, right? I didn't get it. And yeah, I got called in, and then my parents had a meeting with the teacher. And then when we left, they said, don't use that at school anymore. Okay. And that was it. That was all my parents said to me, because for Australians to say, oh, hell, we don't even think it's close to swearing.
Wow.
So there you go.
Did I stump you with that one? Sorry.
No. There's your cultural history lesson, people. Complete with
So I have to add, my sister-in-law, who's not with us anymore, but she used to say Christ on a cracker.
Christ on a cracker. Okay.
And I used to jump at that. And now you might, in a raw moment, hear me go, Christ on a cracker. And I do think that offends people. So I try to be careful.
But that's the Eucharist, isn't it? That's just basically saying communion.
No, that's Christ in a cracker.
Christ on a cracker. Oh,
I like that. I could definitely use that more than Jesus Christ. I think that's acceptable.
well, you're welcome, Brian. You're welcome.
No, thank you. I will. It will be my challenge for the week where I have to slip it into a sentence at work. Oh, Christ on a cracker. So what? Now we're going to slightly change tact because we are absolute potty mouths, and that's okay. It's okay. It's who we are. We're being our genuine selves. What's coming up for you guys on the pod? I know that it's pretty taxing, this work, and you're bearing your soul a lot to people, and you're also undoubtedly, as you've alluded to, you're copping flack from people. You're, in some ways, you're defending your truth and your experience, and people are going to lash back on that if it offends them or challenges them in many ways. So it is a tough gig. So what is coming up for you guys in this tough gig?
Well, I will say that self-care is really important for me. And so even in doing this, I often say, I don't think we could have done this even a couple years after deconstructing, even 10 years after deconstructing. It's been a long time ago. Our kids are all grown. I know Sharon and I used to talk about we couldn't write a book until our kids were grown just because we wouldn't want to out any people in their lives that would be difficult. And so we do catch some stuff, but I've caught it since I wrote my manifesto and said I no longer believe in the Bible. I mean, it was actually much worse back then when we were separating from, we pretty much had recreated almost a community within Pennsylvania. Our lives were very enmeshed with each other. And so when I stepped away from that, Sharon's own dear ex had a vision of my death, my tombstone, and the date that I would die because I had pissed God off so much. So that's not new to catch that. I think what is different than we thought is how much these stories would resonate with other people who really have gone through hell and a lot of trauma and who are sharing their stories with us. And that has been an honor and also very humbling. And I think that's where wow, I think if we referred to it in our last podcast episode, we can't save the world, right? We can't make the world better for everybody. All we can do is our little part. And I think that has been, it takes a toll for sure, because you want to be able to reach out. You want to be able to validate people's story. You want to be able to help, know that they've been heard, that they're not alone. And then I think the ones that touch close to home, and I'll let Sharon talk a little bit more because we're going to be talking about this on our next episode. When the ones closest to us that, lived out in the East Texas area, who were part of all of the ministries that were so intense and so sold out, when they have really fallen, I mean, not just fallen, but fallen in illegal ways, I did not expect that to hurt personally as much as it has hurt. And I know we have heard that from the people who've been close to Mike Bickle, right? Something similar like that. The people that walked with Mike Bickle, they've, helped build the ministry with Mike Bickle, and they're just stunned and pained and hurt that he has done these things. And I think for me, that has been, in these last couple weeks, I've been able to identify with that a little bit more of, you see the public people falling, and, frankly, it's almost been yep, another one bites the dust, and another one bites, and another one bites, another one bites the dust, kind of expecting it. But when you're personally connected to them, it's painful. It's very painful.
Yeah, it really is. Before I talk about that, I'll just say, yeah, the shit we catch, people people saying we're the work of the devil or whatever that. I mean, that honestly, that doesn't bother me. It amuses me because I remember having the beliefs way back when where I would have thought that about myself now as well. I don't think I would have been such an asshole about it, but I would have believed the same things. And so I find that amusing. We actually had one comment from someone who just listened to our last episode, which was the 100,000 download episode, who felt disappointed that, because they want to hear more. They want to hear more of the last day's story. And that was actually hard for me. That really hit me to the core of like, I don't want to be disappointing our listeners. I don't want to disappoint anyone. And that's actually kind of a personal weakness of mine, or shall I say, a character. I don't know. I'm susceptible to self-sacrificing in an unhealthy way for what I perceive to be the benefit of others. And so it's a little bit of a lesson in maintaining balance for me in that. And also, we have people emailing us and commenting in our Facebook community group. And I don't have time to reply on a timely basis or comment on to all of them. And I feel like I wish I did. And I don't want to disappoint people. So those are some of the things that I did not necessarily anticipate we would experience in doing this podcast, but we have. And so that's that. And then I don't know when this episode right now will be airing, guys. We announced in early July that we were going to be taking a break to do some research, to be processing things, and hopefully back in August. But as Tracey mentioned, I mean, we got some news that just really, really rocked hard. And I have been spending the last week digging into learning all I can from forensic psychologists and criminal experts, and looking at everything from online sexual exploitation to child prostitution, which is not child prostitution. It's abuse. It's abuse, and not to be confused with adults who choose to be in sex work for one reason or another. It's totally different when you're talking about underage. Anyway, I'm rambling now, but it has been surprisingly horrific on an emotional level when you're looking at what's happening with people that you know, and then the people who are in the collateral damage surrounding that person. And so.
Yeah. And I think obviously we're alluding to, someone who is involved in a sexual scandal that we would never, ever, ever have believed that, which is what you hear, right? We hear it in the news all the time. It's almost like you'll also hear it's like an epidemic. And I think why this is causing us to ponder is we did our whole series on virgins and volcanoes. We know that we did not develop healthy in our sexuality, right? The belief system does not help you develop a healthy sexual life. And there are different aberrations as a result of that, and some quite serious and quite devastating. And so I think that's part of what I'm just churning in is I know, and how much we had set our own children on that path, and thank God. My own children revolted about as they were hitting puberty, and basically sat me down and we're saying we're not buying into this. We're trying to prepare you. And they were part of the cracks that began in my life when my oldest hit 13. And to this day, I am just so grateful for whatever it was inside of them that could see this unhealthy thing that was happening in our groups, and that we, Sharon and I, had believed and lived, and what we were hoping that they would believe and live. And and how damaging that is in marriages and damaging in your own self-esteem, damaging in your own relationships. And we've talked about it. We talk about purity culture. But I think just to see the amount of fallout that happens in some of these circles through the sexual abuse and the sexual exploitation is staggering, is really staggering.
Yeah, I can only imagine, like, because I've never had anyone that I was close to in the scene have a spectacular fall like you guys have had. So I can imagine how personalized that response would be. So I'm looking forward to you guys, once you're ready, having a chat about that. And we won't go into it here because it's definitely for your pod, and I really really look forward to it. But it's really interesting, isn't it? The whole sexual exploitation stuff as well. And I think that people are ripe, within evangelical Pentecostal type circles for sexual exploitation within marriage as well, because they've got no idea when they go in, and they're told, the male is the head of the house. I certainly went into my marriage, my Christian marriage, with that. You are the lead, you are responsible. And Troy and I have spoken about this before. It's a really heavy weight, because for me, I didn't fucking want to be responsible for my wife. But you had this just absolutely driven into you. You are responsible, blah, blah, blah. And exploitation happens as a result, because you've got two people there who've got no fucking idea how to deal with this stuff. And then you've got a man who has no idea how to deal with this stuff, complete inexperience. It's a taboo topic within the circles. So you're making your way through this. Maybe you're watching, and this wasn't my experience, I want to make it clear. It's like Troy backing away from his pant wetting experience. Is you might rely on porn to guide you in sex education, because again, it's not something that's spoken about in evangelical circles. Again, you may be looking at really unhealthy porn. There's good porn, but it might be really unhealthy porn, and that is driving. And then that gets passed on to your next generation of parenting, because you don't talk to your kids about it. And again, you get these cyclic things happening within these communities that it's just seen as evil and taboo to talk about it in an open way. And I see it from this side. I didn't parent teenagers as a Christian. I was fortunate. I'd left it by then and didn't see those pressures. But I look at some of those teenagers that we grew up with, and again, I didn't become a Christian until I was 17. So I'd had exposure to certainly external influences before that. But fuck, it's unhealthy. And I just, you can see why it just doubles down on that unhealthiness as well.
I think it's the dual message of everything that is you is bad and evil and stinks and is a pile of shit, and Jesus had to die. So everything that is you is wrong. And the inability to be truly authentic and transparent, because we have to deny. I mean, it doesn't matter what it is. Sure, there's sexuality for a lot of people. And then there's just who you are and what you like and what your preferences are in life in general and how you feel. All these things, and this inability to be really authentic and transparent and vulnerable with one another. I believe that is the thing that sets us up for whatever the falls are, whether they are grand moral failures. I hate that term. It's like such a euphemism. Or whether it's sticking with a really shit marriage for your entire life because you're too afraid to be honest with yourself that you're miserable. I mean,
You're trained to accept the suffering as part of your relationship with Jesus, right? I have a good friend not so close anymore, but really bad marriage. And she would never leave because that's part of her devotion to Jesus, to share in his sufferings, is to constantly take on that. And you're like, I was thinking about that the other day. The mantras that we had, just even in the songs that we sang about how we are nothing, we are worms, if you, use the Leonard Ravenhill language, and a daily mantra of just this despising of your humanity. I know we've all said that before, but how much psychological damage that does for years when you're in this, for years that you are just bathing yourself in your shame and your unworthiness. And then it's no surprise that these very unhealthy outlets begin, right? With people who can't keep that down any longer. And it can be very dark. And it's been a while. I don't know the last time I sang, but Sharon and I, we just remember weeping with our hands up, just weeping at how unworthy we are. And I'm like, that is some sick shit.
Well, and that's,
Amen.
And that's, us as people who were, relatively normal, and I put that in inverted commas. But imagine people if you're gay or trans or someone who's struggling with being something else that is completely abhorrent within the eyes of God. So not only are you as filthy rags as a human, but you're also gay. Or you're also someone who's bi or whatever. You're doubly not accepted. And I know that Anthony Van Brown, or as we call him, AVB, would say similar things. And, it doubled down in that sort of stuff. So fucking unhealthy. And I often think about that quite often is that are some of the I find it really hard to take compliments, incredibly difficult to take compliments. And does that have its rooting?
Yeah, but I love that about you, Brian. I think that's a really good thing about you, that you have trouble taking compliments.
So you can have them all.
He just gave you a compliment.
I just gave you a compliment. Turn it back and throw it in my face.
Sorry, it was there. But yeah, I wonder, or, is it because, as Australians, we're just like, yeah, whatever, we'll just get on with it, and we're very stoic in our approaches. But probably, to be honest, I mean, the fact that I do find it hard to take compliments, I think, is rooted in my Christian journey, even though my fundamentalist Christian journey wasn't that long. Like, mine was really, really actually short in my whole Christian journey of whatever it was, 20 years. I was only a fundamentalist for 4 or 5 years. So it's the impact of it is incredibly present. And I'm just going to cry.
Hey, sorry if this is too much of a tangent all of a sudden, but I do have a question for you both, ladies. And you touched on it before, Sharon, when you were saying people want to hear about the Last Days Ministry stuff, and you want to keep people happy, yada yada. But how do you balance that? How do you balance that between like the air quotes ministry of reaching out to your ex community, but also making what you went through relevant to the broader, larger deconstruction movement? Do you feel a responsibility to the whole LDM?
We don't fucking care. We're doing what we want to do.
But you do care.
Well, I mean, I do care. Wait, we have stories we want to tell. We want to tell the story arc of Last Days. We want to tell the story of the things that we learned, whether it was divorce or rethinking the whole abortion thing, or what about raising kids, or I don't know what they are. We have a long list.
Because we're old.
And we're pretty much like, what do you feel is important? What's on your heart today, Tracey? What's the Spirit put on your heart that we're going to share? And I think that is really the thing that's going to guide us, not so much. I mean, I don't know. I suppose if there was a write-in campaign and everybody wanted to hear a certain thing, but only if it's in our wheelhouse.
Only if it's in our wheelhouse.
Because there's so many great podcasts and people doing other things. And we're not here to do everything. We're just not.
Yes. Yeah. And I would say that, so that's, I think, a human struggle that's really hard. And it's very much a foundational value of mine is I am not here to save the world. We've joked about that in our last podcast, but that's really important to me, right? That we are not trying to substitute any kind of sense of we're here, we're not therapists. I often can start an Instagram response to people, people who have shared their open story with us, which we appreciate because we are sharing our open story with other people. But you know what? Go get therapy, go get help. Use other people's stories to see yourself in them, but we are not therapists. We can only share what we've learned along the way, and if that resonates with you or triggers something that you feel like you have to go develop, that's your journey. And one of the things I wish I had said it in our last episode actually is, we were talking about the person in our lives that's really struggling with a very serious health crisis, and it's like we can't fix that for them, and how we were so programmed to, even we believed even if we fasted enough or if we did enough stuff that we could actually heal the sick, right? And obviously we can't do that at all. And our job is to actually help them to see their inner power and strength. And I feel like that is what Christianity really robbed, I know, me of, and our women's school that we brought. We brought everyone in, into our school and told them how terrible they were and they couldn't trust their voice and they couldn't trust what's inside their heart. And it's like, it's the opposite. It's like, you know what? You have an inner sense of strength, and we would love to help you find that as we have found that, because that's what's been liberating. That's what's been freeing. We're not the answer. We don't have the answers. We got a lot of shit still swirling in our lives. We hope we can share that so that you'll feel normal and human. I think one of the biggest, revelations, I still use Christian terms a lot, my Christian vocabulary, is knowing that I don't have to be free from my humanity. I mean, that to me is such a beautiful truth. And it's like, I am human. I'm human. I'm human to my kids. I'm human in my relationships. I'm human. And you know what? Damn it. I accept myself as a human. So I'm not going to try to disappoint people right and left, but I will. Because damn it, I have feet of clay too.
Did we answer your question, Troy, or did we go off on a tangent?
Probably a bit of both. It's interesting though, because I listen to you guys regularly. You're actually one of the only deconstructing podcasts that I listen to now. And I feel like I get to spend time with you all the time. It's just the way it sort of is, I guess, just by listening to your podcast. And of course we chat and everything. But I love the fact that you guys drop these little Keith Greenisms from time to time, like the other one where you were going, this generation of believers, we're responsible for this generation of souls. And I can actually finish the quotes, you know what I mean? Because we're responsible for it. And it's just hilarious, that, but I see that in you still. I know you're sitting there going, oh, we're not, but you still, the pod, and we do it as well. It's part of meaning and purpose and everything. And part of what we're doing, we're not responsible for everyone, but we're still trying to do good and to make up for the shit that we did. But yeah, I think what you guys are doing is wonderful. And I think you should totally keep doing it. But that's why I was asking the question about, how much is a responsibility to the community that you left, that is LDM, and how much is it trying to, make it relevant to others? I think there's a balance there, and I think you walk it quite well. But I do think that telling your Keith Green stories or Last Days Ministry stories, there's a relevance there as well because of the impact that had on so many of us, that whole no compromise. I'd love to know how many books were actually sold. Do you know how many copies of No Compromise?
The book of No Compromise?
No idea.
I don't know.
We've been long gone.
There would be a lot, like all those tracks and everything that went out as well, and then all Keith's music. The impact is huge.
Well, the magazine and the tracks are millions and millions and tens of millions. Yeah, millions. I'm sure there's a way to find out how many No Compromise books have been sold.
Yeah,
but
they probably have it on a back jacket of the latest one. But it is important for me. So I feel like the underlying motivation, and yes, then you hear people's stories and you want to do right by people. But I was really irritated by the history of the Jesus people getting out there that left out all of this. So like that is one of my main drivers of like, you will not tell this mystified version of the Jesus people without telling this rest of this part. So that is very important for me to get out there.
Yeah, and that's coming up with this whole bridge thing, because it's going back in some disturbingly connected ways. And, Troy, one thing Keith used to say was that at Last Days, I remember this sitting around the ranch house on that god-awful red carpet and worship times. And he's like, you know what? We're only here while God's got a use for us. As soon as the Holy Spirit's gone and says we're done, we're done. Man, we're putting dynamite under these buildings. We're getting out of here, because we're not going to be like the Salvation Army and be this corpse, with IVs and on life support. We're going to be done. And I think, so that kind of idea is in our DNA. It's a little radical. And Tracey and I, the two of us have talked. We're like, okay, we've got a list of things we want to talk about, stories we want to tell about Last Days, about Keith Green, about our journeys. And once we've told those stories, we're done. This is we don't see this going on in perpetuity. We're going to do what we need to do, and then we're going to be done.
I did do a Google search while people were talking, and look, it looks like about 1.5 million copies were sold, but I thought there'd be more.
Phenomenal. Yeah.
I thought there'd be more, but that's from Amazon. So maybe there's more. Maybe the publishers would have another stat, but I can't find it. But that's a live update.
But it's not just the book; it's the music and it's the tracts and
the souls and the souls.
Goes on. Yeah, well, this generation of believers that you and me are a part of, we're responsible for this generation.
I mean, the thing is, you can run to the end of the highway. You probably still won't find what you're looking for.
Tell me that wasn't playing around in my head when I was overseas. And it's funny because I lived overseas for a really long time, and you can run to the bullshit. You can totally find what you're looking for overseas, because you get exposed to all these experiences and cultures and people, and like, that's just bullshit. That's just like stay in the cult. That's what that song was. And I realized that later on. It was like, that song is stay here under my control. Yes. Don't go away because I've got the answers here. Bullshit.
But ultimately, what we're all really looking for and need to find is ourselves. That's what we're looking for. And we've been misdirected. We've been lied to. It's finding ourselves that is the important part, that is both the journey and the destination. And I don't know, Tracey, you were saying something earlier, reminded me a really profound song that was huge in my early tentative baby steps away from the control and the self-imposed mind control and the self-imposed judgment and hatred of myself, was Sinead O'Connor, The Healing Room. And I'd put that on and close my eyes and listen and sing along in my mind, and tears would just flow. And it is about finding that wisdom, finding that strength, finding that love within our own hearts, because that's where it is.
For those of you who'd like to find yourself, I invite you to bow your head, close your eyes. And if I could
Fuck you, Brian.
If I could
you
just
don't have to be such a cunt. Don't be such a cunt.
If I could ask the keyboard player to please step up, that would be great.
So, that is the funny thing, though, because I was like, wow, that sounds really new age. We're going to get shit for that because it sounds really new age.
But
But
it's true.
you know, there was a part
true.
of like that Holy Spirit being inside of you that is like, it kind of touches on that, right? Because as women, and I think that's been something that I mean, I'm a child of the 70s where women's lib was trying to set us free, and we were like working against all of that whole message through our fundamentalism. And there is a part of, hey, we as women, guess what? We are not responsible for the sin of all the earth. Like, that's a heavy thing. And I
Mhm.
don't know that I ever stepped back and thought about that. But the whole Eve story, like, motherfucker,
Not to
the
mention,
whole world.
not to mention
We
how
are
much of a
responsible.
creep is the Holy Spirit. I mean, he's inside so many women. He's a player. Unbelievable.
I know. And so I'm like, there is a truth in all these spiritual, disciplines about inside. Like, I do think I am seeing there is something about finding it inside. It's not out here. It's
Mhm.
not that man. It's not that religion. There is something about the power of the human spirit inside. So we don't have it all figured out. I know that did sound like an altar call by Sharon for her inner self. But I think, especially as women, finding your inner power is really important.
No, I agree. And
I'm actually blown away by how much misogyny and the diminishing of the women thing was actually going on at LDM, because that didn't come across in the music and in the book. And that, like, I if I had turned up and I would have heard that, I probably would have gone, nah, I'm not staying.
Well,
This
wait a
is
second.
just
I don't know
bad.
that there was. Wait a second. Other than just the
The
normal.
Bible, the Bible message.
Well, that's what I mean. I mean, it was just the normal,
Yeah,
basic
but I didn't buy into
conservative
that
Christian.
in church. Like, even when Brian talks about how, that the weight on him, I was just like, no, we're equal. Like, I don't know
Interesting.
why. I never bought into that, but I never bought into it. Even as a
Equal, but different roles.
Yeah, no, I didn't buy into that either. I was like, my wife and I, we were going to have a ministry together, and she was going to be doing what she was doing, and I was, that was just my mentality. I don't know why. I just never bought into it.
Well,
yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I totally did. My ex-wife was, Troy can attest to it, and many of our listeners that know her as well. She was very artistic. She was, she got a scholarship to an art school, and she was modern dance and classical ballet and stuff as well. And we're like, you'll dance for Jesus while I preach. It was absolutely bizarre, the sort of thing that you stitch together and go, this will be a ministry, and I will do this while you will dance and usher in the spirit. Fucking bizarre when I look back.
I could just imagine you up there preaching, and she's just doing the interpretive dance next to you. Is that what you?
I would love
sort
to
of
see that. That's what I tried to achieve at my wedding. I wish I would have known her. She's a little bit younger than me, but
she would have done it. She totally would have done it. Weird and wonderful times. But ladies, I think we are drawing to a close. And what has been really, we didn't think, what are we going to chat about? We just, because we love chatting with you ladies, and we have such a connection and a friendship, I think it's good to just come on and have a natter. So I'm hoping people got bits and pieces out of the many different changes in topics. But I do think that there was a lot of good stuff in there. And I think one thing that both of us, or all four of us, are trying to do is just be genuine and be true to ourselves and where we're at right now, and which may not be where we were 5 years ago, and it definitely won't be where we are in 5 years from now. So
preach it, brother, preach it.
Absolutely.
Congratulations on 100,000 downloads.
Yes.
Oh, thank you.
And I think there'll be hundreds of thousands of more, because now that you've got the momentum going, and you ladies are in the top 2% of all podcasts around the globe. I know in that episode you said you're in like top 5%, but Sharon, as you know, I did send you the ratings machine, and you're in the top 2%. I mean, you're killing it.
That just blows my mind. That just blows my mind.
No, I think it's brilliant, and it's testament, may I say, to the content you're putting out, but also
It's a New Testament.
Well, all thanks be to Troy and Brian.
No, stop it.
All thanks.
Stop it. You release all your
more so you can become less. True.
No, it's wonderful. And as Troy said, it's also one of the only deconstruction podcast that I listen to as well. I struggle with others, and I really connect, and I think it's just the stories you tell, the genuineness in which the way you approach it. I think you're quite gracious in the way you approach it too. You don't come out all judgy, and that's the beauty of it as well. And the fact that you are just bearing your souls. I think that's a wonderful and beautiful thing that a lot of people don't do. A lot of people are quite pretentious, and they'll put on their social media selves, and you don't. You put on, you're undressed, you're naked. So
we could probably have more social media selves.
No, don't. It's don't be sanitized. I think it's great, and it's a beautiful thing that you're not. So thank you. No, thank you so much for the chat today. And I know these will continue, and I think we will release many more episodes together, because even though we're not all the same in everything, we are definitely such a tight synergy between all of us, and
you're our little bros. You are our little bros.
So much.
Yes, and you're our only grands, so we love it. It's a beautiful thing, and it's great that Sharon, you do have the Only Grands with a Z website that you bought. So I can't wait for the content to drop. I get on there every now and then. I go, no, there's no content there yet.
Nothing there. Tracy's the one who's going to have to do that.
We could put some pictures up for sure. I mean, we called ourselves Confessions of the Cult Sisters because we did want to tell some of the wild side that we went through that we haven't really gotten to yet, but
more to come,
maybe
folks.
That will be the site for the wild pictures.
We're looking forward to that.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to the deconstruction journey. You call it your manifesto. I was thinking about it today, with your thesis that you almost nailed to the church door, a la Martin Luther.
I fucking love to have nailed it to a church door.
You should publish that. I'd like to read it.
Yeah, Tracy, that should go at some point. Once we do our deconstruction episodes.
It should. And actually, one of the brothers from Last Days Ministries wrote a point-by-point response to me on it, and we went back and forth for a few times, and it's a funny read now. But it was all fresh then, right? So
it's great. I look forward to reading that. You must release that. Do an Amazon self-publish. You can do that. So,
ooh,
it's easy. Well, thank you again, and have a wonderful day. Wonderful evening. It is the day here and the evening where you are in Kentucky, Tracy. And
yeah, I was going to say I am live from the border of Kentucky.
No one lives in fucking Kentucky.
That drives her brain mad because
I know. That's why I do it.
Yeah, I know she really struggles with that every time we say she lives in Tennessee, but we just want to say she lives in Kentucky because Kentucky sounds.
I'm literally on the border of Kentucky.
I think it's hilarious though that you're like, we're so far out of fundamentalism. We've moved on from fundamentalism. I live in Florida and I live in Tennessee. Yeah, you guys have really moved on.
Well, no. Sharon's broadcasting from Virginia at the moment.
I'm in Virginia right
exactly.
now. Which is just as bad.
Remember the Titans, right?
Yeah. Jerry Falwell, Liberty University, Pat Robertson, the 700 Club. Oh, my God.
On that note, thank you again.
Good night.
Because you have killed us with your little name dropping there. All righty. See you, ladies.
Good night. Thanks, guys.
If you'd like to connect with the I Was a Teenage Fundamentalist podcast, then please see the links in our link tree in the show notes. We invite you to join our listener community on Facebook, and we're also on Instagram, X, and Reddit. Check out our merch on Redbubble. We've got t-shirts, hoodies, mugs, and all kinds of great ex-evangelical stuff that you can wear proudly. All proceeds go to building and promoting the podcast. We want to give a huge shout out to our Patreon supporters. Subscribers get a range of benefits, including free merch, early access to episodes, access to our exclusive subscribers group, and monthly bonus content. Again, all proceeds of this go to the running and promotion cost of the podcast. A special thanks to Ava, who manages our social strategy, and also to Kerry and Bree, who manage our Facebook listener group, and also to Bree, who puts out our monthly newsletter on Substack. All of our episodes are transcribed by Leanne to increase accessibility. The show is produced and hosted by Brian McDowell and Troy Waller. The sound engineering for this episode was done by Clifford. I Was a Teenage Fundamentalist is available wherever you find your podcasts. Again, you can find all our links in our link tree in the show notes. Or why don't you pop across to our website at www.iwasateenagefundamentalist.com.